The Torah portion of Haazinu is actually the last of all the portions that we read on a Shabbos, on a Sabbath, because the final 54th portion of the Torah, V'zos HaBrocha, is read on Simchat Torah when we complete the Torah. So this is actually the last of the Sabbath readings, and it's a very beautiful portion. It contains a song of Moses, which we're going to examine now, some of the different verses and lessons that we can derive from them. Chapter 32, verse 4. The song says, "His deeds are perfect." Of course, this is has a literal meaning, but we're going to move straight to the metaphorical or spiritual meaning. And that is, says Rabbi Isaac Luria, 16th century Kabbalist, what is his deed? What is God's deed? This perfection of deed. Says Rabbi Isaac Luria, it's talking about Adam, the first man. His deed, God's deed, what he created, man, was perfect. Now, of course, that perfection didn't last long. Adam sinned, and he was expelled from the Garden of Eden. But God let him stay for that Sabbath. He sinned just before, on a Friday, when he was created. That one day God let him stay. And, according to the Kabbalah, he composed Psalm 92. What we have as Psalm 92 on that Sabbath. How did it happen? Because later Adam was reincarnated as King David. And when King David wrote the Psalms, he kind of rewrote this original primordial psalm, which had been composed by Adam. Where do we see it? Because verse 5 of Psalm 92 says, "For I rejoiced, O God, in your deed." Chapter 32, verse 5 says, "A crooked and twisted generation." Here we have a hint to the idea of reincarnation. Moses is saying, if you are crooked in this lifetime, then your soul is going to be twisted back into another body in a future lifetime. Twisted, the reason why reincarnation is referred to as twisted, because it's an uncomfortable experience to the soul. The soul doesn't like returning back to this world. And therefore we have a little warning here, says Rabbi Isaac Luria, of the perils of returning back to the world through reincarnation. Chapter 32, verse 15, Israel forsook the God who made them. Now, the word forsook here in Hebrew is vayitosh, which can also mean to weaken. So if we translate it that way, we have the kind of an almost absurd rendition of this verse that Israel, the Jewish people, weakened God. Weakened the God who made them. Now, what on earth does that mean? How can you weaken God? Isn't God perfect? Isn't God omnipotent? You can't weaken him. Well, that's right. Obviously, you can't weaken him. But you can make him look weak. You can make him appear weak. How do you do that? Well, if in one particular incarnation you fail in your mission in life and you don't do whatever you were supposed to do in life, whatever that might be, a particular mission, a particular commandment, a particular good deed, a whole host of good deeds. If you fail and have to be reincarnated back again, then it makes God look bad. Why? Because think about it. What if a craftsman can't get his object right the first time and he has to redo it? What if, you release some new piece of technology and find out that it has to be recalled and reissued? Looks bad for the company, right? Well, same with God. We can't weaken him literally, but we can make him look weak by failing to do what we're supposed to be doing in one lifetime, requiring it to be corrected in a subsequent lifetime. Chapter 32, verse 49 says, this is at the end, after the song is complete, God tells Moses that, this is going to be it. He's going to die now. And God says, climb up the Avarite mountains here at Mount Nebo. Everything in the Torah has significance. It teaches us a lesson. Why is Moses' passing and burial? Of course, he was buried by God himself. Why did that take place on the Avarite mountains? What does the word Avarite mean, and what's the significance? Well, Avarite means dissension. It means disputed. So there's actually some kind of dispute over Moses' burial place. Now, that wasn't a dispute between people. It was a dispute between spiritual forces. You see, have you ever wondered why the desert is a desert and why inhabited land is inhabited land? No one's ever built a city in the Sahara Desert. It's impossible. It's impossible for anyone to live there. Why is that the case? So, spiritually speaking, a desert is a place of Sitra Achra, of the demonic forces which predominate and have power over that region, which is why such regions become inhabited. And especially, this is true of the Jewish people in the desert, Moses' generation who sinned, they died there, and they were buried there. So to die and be buried in the desert means that basically the Sitra Achra, the demonic forces, got the better of you. And certainly that's not true with Moses. Moses did not sin. He didn't make this error with the sin of the spies, and therefore he didn't belong in the desert. So where did he belong? Well, why wasn't he buried in a built-up place, which is not under the control of the demonic forces? Well, says the Zohar that the Avarite mountains were disputed. In other words, they were the in-between, between the demonic forces and the forces of holiness and goodness. There's an in-between zone, which could go either way. It's being tugged at in both directions. And therefore Moses was buried in the disputed mountains because he wished to win over that undecided area to the side of good, to the side of holiness, and make sure that it didn't get snatched away by the Sitra Achra. Now, as I mentioned before, this is, in a sense, the end of the Torah. We ended, of course, on Simchat Torah, but this is the last Sabbath reading. And so I think the spiritual exercise for this week should be really a very deep soul reckoning about the entire Torah and its significance. You see, the Torah is not just a book of law. Torah is also, in Hebrew, the word Torah also means teaching. From the word hira, teaching. It means instruction. If the Torah doesn't teach you how to live your life, if it's not in a sense a self-help book, if it doesn't give you some insight into how to be a better person, then it's not really the Torah. It's not really working properly. Because that's what it is. It's not a crime to render the Torah into a self-help book. It's a crime not to. Because every week when we read the parasha, we should be deriving lessons from it that actually enhance our life. So now we're ending the Torah. I think it's a good idea to think back about all the Torah portions, anything that you can remember, and make a sort of soul reckoning of whether you've really managed to incorporate any of these messages into your life. And if you're going to find that a bit difficult, I'd like to give you a brief suggestion of how to structure that. When you're trying to use the Torah in a life application sense, there should be 4 general phases, which I call awakening, self-realization, growth, and healing. First, you have to awaken. Awakening means, it's a fancy way of awakening literally means breaking through the constraints of narrow consciousness, entering into broader consciousness. What that practically means is that you have to expose the faulty thought patterns that you had before. To wake up. You need to show why what you were thinking, what you were doing, the way you were looking at things is wrong, and realize that this unhealthy or dysfunctional behavior needs correcting. Then is the more painful task of self-realization. That means basically you have to admit there's something wrong with you and that you need to change. You haven't just been enlightened. You haven't just heard a podcast and something inspirational. It's woken you up. But to face that ugly, painful reality that I need to change, that I have a problem that needs fixing, is the difficult process of self-realization. Then you need to grow. Take that Torah insight, think about it again and again and again, and then, God willing, you will come to healing over a period of months, days or months, or maybe even years of constantly thinking about helpful teachings. The Torah will achieve its goal of being a lesson to us, of being a tool of healing to us, and bring us to peaceful life in this world and the next. Please join us again for Torah in 10.